see where we've landed? On a museum.
Welcome to the Whovians. This evening we are reviewing the first Doctor's episode, The Space Museum. Your host for this evening is Alid, for which we apologise deeply.
See, look at that. That is the power of time travel. We have the Doctor himself here. Wow, that is amazing. So let's start off. Let's start today off with Kevin. Go ahead, Kevin. What do you think of the Space Museum?
Well, I loved the first part, really. It was really interesting. It was because I'm, younger. I have seen this in a cartoon or somewhere from my childhood because I recognize the scenario of it. It was really good to see that in the 60s, if you are there. And I don't know, if I have to place myself in as a child in the 60s, man, that story would have, been really good. Yes, the second part was also very good. Because you have this story is what the only thing I'm going to tell you. You have to concentrate on it, really, because if you look away, or you're going to do maybe one thing, you can forget about it. So it's maybe it's maybe a forgettable story for me because I was, you look away and then you see a funny scene of Hartnell in a Dalek.
I told them all, I am the master.
So that was really cool to see that. That's all. That the Doctor is just funny and serious at some times because he don't know what the situation is, or maybe he does. So the third part was really like, you have to get your teeth right to go through it. That's basically what I got to say. And that part was really like there was no doctor in it. It was very cool that Barbara and Ian, were carrying on the story, and the soldiers, the evil ones, I forgot their name, were also trying to still get you interested because even where they have to say even without Hartnell in that year, you can still make a good episode. It was really cool. The fourth part was really cool. It was just like a big war. So like it's not a war, but it was a war between enemies. It was like those are the cops and those are the evil ones. So that was very cool. And the ending I really love. It was a cliffhanger, you can speak, because it was really good. A Dalek saying to Scarrow, man, that was just awesome for that time, really. And I give it a 7 out of 10.
7. There you go. Let's move over now to Lady Neo. What do you have to say, Lady Neo?
I won't lie, I had some time. I was struggling with this episode. I really was. But I have to admit, the first part was very good. It was like a character-driven part, and all of them did very well on that episode. I always thought of the first Doctor with Ian and Barbara being the mother and the father, and Vicki being like the daughter, and the Doctor being the creepy old granddad, Anyways, overall though, this was a very, it was a decent, typical Doctor Who episode. The twist in the beginning was good. Let's see, my favorite bits in it was Vicki. Vicki's helping the rebels stand up for themselves, and Barbara, she was coughing all that smoke. She was going crazy. She asserted herself and was helping and all that stuff. Ian, he was determined to find the Doctor. He found the Doctor. Vicki was doing the rebels. Barbara was doing her thing. Ian was doing his thing. The Doctor was being curious, and you know what happens to curious people. But my only little problem with it is when they all came back together, here we go with the whining and the typical, oh, doctor, there has to be a way out of this. I was like, oh my goodness, you guys were so good when you were separate, which tells me they kind of probably didn't know what to do with them when they brought them back together again. But overall, decent episode, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Thank you, Neo. Thank you. Now let's shoot on over to Jimmy.
In 2004, and part of Outpost Gallifrey's 40th anniversary, they did a poll for what are the best and what are the worst of Doctor Who, and this was voted as one of the top 10 worst of the episodes. Over the years, how does it stand up? The first part is very good. First part is excellent. It raises all these questions. How did they get their clothes changed without them being consciously aware of it? I did think that their water dispenser was a bit extravagant for a water dispenser. But the first part was very good, and then you get the ending of the first part where they're not really there. They're somewhere else. That was good. The rest is a struggle to get through. I almost gave up watching it in the third part. William Hartnell's not even in the third part because he was on vacation. Barbara gets to act really badass in this. And it's interesting because this was the episode, and while they were making it, that Jacqueline Hill decided she didn't want to do it anymore, that she was going to leave the series. Vicki was really good in this. Vicki was very intuitive. She knew what was going on before anyone else did. But it was a struggle to get through. The three guys that dressed alike and had an extra eyebrow were just annoying. How they could even have a revolution was beyond me. Those three parts was such a struggle that if it wasn't for the first part, I would give this a negative 27. But because of the first part, the Space Museum, just watch the Space Museum. Don't even watch the other three parts. I have to give this a 1. It's awful. The first part's terrific. First part alone would be a 10. The rest, out the window.
A 1. A 1. I think I need to lie down after that. A 1. Wow. Will Brian go lower than a 1? What do you have to say, Brian?
I don't know. Will I? This Doctor Who story with William Hartnell, I would have to say it's one of my favorites. I think it's like one of the best within the Hartnell era. I absolutely love the story. Like, go to the Space Museum and everything. It's just, I love it. The companions were great, but it was good. I love this story. Like I said, I think it's one of the best Hartnell stories they ever done. Good job on it. So I would just have to say that this story would probably deserves at least 7 TARDISes.
There you have it. 7 TARDISes from Brian. Now, let's go over to Texas Tim.
I like this. It's very 60s. It's very 60s TV. I think the first episode is very Twilight Zone in a lot of ways, and it's for the first time since the show had begun, I think they were trying to show how scary the future could be. If you happen to see yourself in the future and you were trying to avoid that kind of thing, it's kind of scary for them because they don't know what's going on. I see the point where it does kind of, I wouldn't say it falls apart in the later 3 episodes, but I think it turns into something slightly different. But I think it's really good that Vicki gets a lot of character development in this story, of the kind that they never really gave to Susan. And she does, spark a revolution amongst these young eyebrowed kids who are supposed to represent, I think the mods or whatever from the time, and how they were rebelling against the establishment. I think it's all kind of a parable or a fable of that in a way. It's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of setup for the oncoming Dalek epic, The Chase. which follows this story. I don't find it that bad at all. I think it's an entertaining watch. I don't think you should try to watch it all at once. I paced it out and watched it an episode an evening, and it was intended to be watched one a week. So I mean, yeah, it is a bit of a struggle if you're going to try to watch the whole thing at one time. But I think if you pace yourself, then it's an enjoyable story. So I would give it an 8 as well. I think it's worth a look. But I think it's an excellent piece of 60s television.
An 8 from Texas Tim. So now, Whovians calling the doctor. Whovians calling the doctor. Can you come in, doctor?
I wasn't aware I'd gone out. I'm going to get rid of this and use my binoculars. I remember when this first went out, an awful lot of people didn't really know what to make of it, because mostly what we'd had up till then was historical referencing. And the historical referencing suddenly stopped with this. You went into pure science fiction. So much so that they actually brought in something that had never been brought in before. We'd had dimensions in space, but this then brought in dimensions in time, which hadn't been done before. Rewatching it, one of the things that amused me was the Morlocks and their hairstyle. The wigs of the Morlocks, I remember at the time, caused a great deal of merriment amongst the people of my age, shall we say. And I'd forgotten how funny they actually were, those hairstyles. Really striking. You know, they took Widow's Peak to the nth degree. It's a wonder it didn't actually turn into a pair of eyebrows. But yes, as Kevin has alluded, one of the funniest moments in it was the Doctor hiding himself in the empty Dalek, and after they'd gone, opening the lid, looking out, and having a damn good laugh at them. Brilliant. Magic moment. They gave him more and more comedy as it went on. And the reason for that is, of course, he was absolutely brilliant in comedy. He'd done lots of very serious films, lots of war films, I mean, he was in Brighton Rock, which was a very big, serious film at the time. And, but he also did Carry On film, Carry On Sergeant. He did several other comedy films. The man, his comedy timing was absolutely excellent. And no matter how ill he got, he never, ever lost that comedy timing. For me, yes, there was the double eyebrows. That was another source of amusement for everybody. But I don't know if you noticed, but in amongst the lads with the double eyebrows was Jeremy Bullock, who would one day turn up again. In fact, Jeremy Bullock turned up several times. Really nice guy. I drove him completely mad one day, and that was good fun. But yeah, it was a good watch at the time. As Tim says, it wasn't intended to be watched all in one go. It's a week by week by week, and it was just an absolute joy for everybody at the time, and something a little bit new, because there wasn't madly historical references, madly scientific this and that. It was just a damn good story, well told and well acted in the main. So for me, in spite of the wigs of the Morlocks, it gets an 8.
An 8? Oh, well, I'm glad you said Morlocks correct. So, what do I think? Well, well, I think I like this episode. I quite like it. It's, the opening is great. The first episode is brilliant. I really like the first episode. The problem is the sets are cheap, and they're really cheap. They're really bare. If honestly, this isn't a museum I would pay to go into. they'd have to pay me to go into it, you know. Like some of the effects are good, like when Vicki puts her hand through that machine, you know, when she sticks her hand in it. That's quite good. I like that effect. The episode 1 cliffhanger is great. I think that's really good. And there's some really good ideas in this. There's some really good ideas. But like Beef Dad said, the doctor in the Dalek is just so funny. It's a great moment. It is a classic moment. It really is. If I had to score this, I think I would give it a 6. I think I'd give it a 6. I like it, but it's not my favorite, not by far, not by any stretch of the imagination. But you know, I watched it today and I enjoyed it a little bit more than I thought I would. Maybe it's because I had low expectations from the last time I watched it, but you know, I'll give it a 6. So I'm going to open the floor up now to whoever wants to speak.
Well, in the 60s, or when these shows were made, the doctor disappears for an episode because they were doing pretty much 40 weeks a year of filming, sometimes more than that. And so your lead and your co-leads would often take a week off and disappear for an episode, and they would usually write around it. And that's why William Hartnell isn't in episode 3. This isn't the first or the last time he would be missing for an episode, or even doubled up with a body double on occasion. And it would carry on with Patrick Troughton as well sometimes, and his co-stars. It wasn't until they cut the series in half and went color in the 70s that you didn't have this problem anymore, where the actors got plenty of time off when they weren't filming the series.
I like the how do you call it, the grimminess of the, you know, the dark. Sometimes he's very funny, and then he's sarcastic.
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody for joining me, and especially Beef Dad for coming as the original Doctor. Thank you, Beef Dad. And I would like to thank you for watching. And remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and we will see you next time. And as always, keep on winning.
Keep on winning.